as I said, I want to do one more example. So we're going to do one more example. It's going to be an example from the practice final. Okay? So as I've said, if I just need to find the practice final, there we go, practice final. Can you guys see this, by the way, or is this way too small? It could be, I might actually, I suspect it would be better if I did this. Is this correct? Yeah. So we're just going to do one of the practice finals problem. Like you guys are going to see, like you got problem 3 version 1, problem 3 version 2, problem 3 version 3, problem 3 version. I actually give 6 examples of the problem. So that's actually a fair amount of practice. Now, those examples are split dynamic and static. So they're not all static. So anything that's dynamic, you guys, it's like, that's not fair game, let's be clear. So I may try to supplement what I've done here with 1 or 2 extra examples to help you guys feel comfortable with the final that are going to be all of the static variety. Right? Because, I do take my claim seriously that this takes practice. And I do know that it's difficult for you guys to practice this without me giving you problems. So that will be, I will give you guys more practice, both via the homework, which will be posted soon, and via a bit more practice final stuff. Okay? But hopefully you'll feel like you've had ample opportunity. Now, whether you take the opportunity to practice or not is your decision. You guys are adults, I trust it. You know what's good for you better than I do. So, but let's just go ahead and do a problem, okay? And I've decided I'm picking a problem that introduces a new angle on using these tools, right? Because the example we did at the end of last lecture, which was the jewelry line example, it was about using these tools to value a corporate project, correct? Notice the example that we did a second ago was using these tools to value a financial security, right? But like one where things were messy, so you need to be a little bit like cautious with the number you get, right? Now what I want to do is I want to do another example where it's about a financial security, okay? So we'll do that. Let's do that. Okay, something like that. You represent a large private investment fund that owns all the debt in a financially troubled supplier of automotive parts. Look, there's you're gonna see this. This is kind of an example that you'll notice is maybe a little bit relevant if you're working in private equity. I'm gonna give you guys an example in the homework that's gonna be similar to this, but actually gonna be harder. Where you're going to see, hopefully, that it's relevant for things like investment banking and M&A transactions. So my point is, this example we're doing now, and one of the examples you're going to see on the homework, it's about showing you how you can use these tools in the real world in financial advisory, not corporate finance where you're working inside a corporation. And there's a reason for why I do that. It's because most of you guys are actually going to work. If you guys go in finance, the typical McGill student going into finance doesn't go join a corporate finance group in a company, though some of you do. And that's important stuff, let's be clear. But most of you actually end up going into investment banking or something like that. And this is an example of a problem that if you wanted to incorporate value flexibility tools into that workflow, you might look at this, okay? So that's why I have these 2 categories of problems. One stays to the mission of corporate finance. This is called corporate finance. But the other one stays to the mission that most students have, which is to be in financial advisory. Okay? So try to touch a little bit of both. So let's talk about this transaction now, right? Or this security. Right? So this troubled automotive parts firm has a debt with face value of $160 million, pays no coupons, and matures in 2 years. So it's a pretty simple debt security. The only problem is there's a lot of it, and this company is a little bit worried. Moreover, you have the option to convert the debt into 40% of the firm's post-conversion equity. So actually, this is not normal debt, actually. I take that back. It's debt with some conversion feature. If the company goes into default, 50% of the firm's value will be destroyed in bankruptcy because of legal costs and other costs of financial distress. Example might be lost customers. Never good for your business when it's written in the press that you're about to go down. Especially, automotive parts are what we call durable goods. So you kind of want the company to still be there after you buy the parts. Not good for them. They don't want this. They don't want this in the FT or the WSJ. And debt overhang. We'll talk about that stuff later. You don't need to dwell on that. The firm will pay no dividends to equity holders over the next 2 years. Furthermore, you have estimated that if the company owned no debt, so this is a hypothetical, firm as a whole, right? It would be worth $150 million, and its equity volatility would be 45%. That's the equivalent of our firm as a whole stuff for HC. Firm as a whole is worth 60. Firm as a whole has a value volatility of 50%. In this example, firm as a whole, which is the hypothetical combination of both the debt and the equity, is worth 150 and has a value volatility of 45%. Okay? So, by the way, you need to estimate this. Sorry about that. So this is a little bit dirty. This is not as dirty as the VC example because this company, let's assume at least, is publicly traded. So you could actually go and dig up the data on all of their debt and on all of their equity and try to ballpark this number that way. You could do it. It just would take more work than, getting the value of a call option on a stock. Riskless rate is 5% per year. Every time I mention expressed as a continuously compounded rate, you should never get worried about those things. I'm always quoting the rate in the most convenient way for you. So I'm not going to do this weird jackass move where I give it to you quoted in the wrong way and you need to convert before you use it in the formulas. I'm never going to do that. I just put it in there as a formality. So now let's actually read the questions. Will the firm ever default prior to 2 years from now? Under what conditions would it default? Right, and this is kind of more of a logical question. So this is not, you know what? It's a logical question. So actually, rather than answering it for you, I'll leave it as food for thought for you to think, right? And if you think you have an answer and you send it to me, I'll tell you whether I agree with it, okay? But since this is not about the tools we discussed, I actually think it's better to leave it untouched and to let you think about it. Because I do reserve the right to ask logical questions like this that point to whether you understand stuff. Now you'll notice it's a 2-point question, right? So these questions are not make or break on an exam, but they are there to help me learn who really gets it versus who mechanically gets it versus who doesn't get it. And to me, that's what the goal of an exam should be. It should be to categorize folks into these different buckets, right? Because that seems to be the fairest way to go to decide on grades, for instance, right? So now let's actually continue to read. And now we're going to go into the stuff that's actually relevant to the tools we've actually discussed. So next question, using static replication techniques. I don't need to put this on the exam because if I give you guys a flexibility question now, it's pretty much always going to be static replication because it's the only one we've covered. And the information listed above. Determine the value of the investment fund's position in the automotive supplier's debt. In order to do this, you will need to use, I'm giving a lot of instructions here. I'm not going to give you this much instruction on the final exam. You will need to use Black-Scholes formula, you should know that already, along with the formula for the price of a cash or nothing binary call. Well, you don't even need to know the formula. You just need to use my template. You have access to my template on the exam, okay? So just know how to use it. I even define what a cash or nothing binary call is in this problem. I will not do that on the final. I expect you to know it, okay? Blah, blah, blah. The rest of it is blah, blah, blah from me, okay? all that matters is I asked you determine. I could have written this problem down. In fact, on the actual exam, I will write it this way. The problem will be just the following words. Determine the value of the investment fund's position in the automotive supplier's debt. Period, full stop. That is all I will ask. And you should understand what steps you need to take in light of that question. I usually hold the hand a little bit more in a semester where people need to figure out, are they going to use the first approach, static, or the second approach, dynamic? Because that puts a little bit more burden on your shoulders. And because it puts a little bit more burden on your shoulders, I want to loosen the burden by coaching a little bit. But you don't have that burden this semester. So, I don't feel the need to coach as much. Okay? But let's go ahead and do this, okay? So this part is going to be relatively easy. And then I'll introduce a wrinkle to the problem that I think is somewhere in this problem. And you'll see it's kind of like a neat little twist to the problem, okay? But you can see a good deal of the problem is just this part, right? It's over 50% of the problem is just, can you solve this question? Understand the security and value it, right? So let's go ahead and do that, right? So just know, like, this is the majority of the problem, okay? I do try to think quite carefully on the final on how much of the percentage of the problem I want to have it be you just showing me you know the stuff I taught you versus how much of the problem is, do you have a qualitative understanding of what I said in class? And then do you have a bit of an ability to like push it a tiny bit further quantitatively? This problem actually hits on all of those. Okay, so let's go ahead and, oh, by the way, in a problem like this on an average final, the average score within the cohort would be maybe between, I'm not sure if I should tell you this, but I'll tell you anyway. The average score among the entire sections might be between 7 and 11 points out of 25. Okay, so this is a difficult problem for most people. It's important to keep that in mind. Trust me, like, I curve to the most generous thing at the end of the day. So like, that should actually give you peace of mind, right? So if you find this difficult, you're not alone. It's okay. It's not disastrous, right? My hope is that the average goes up a little bit this year because we've focused our efforts on this a bit more, right? But like, I don't expect an average score of like 18 out of 25. That's not what I expect, right? And, someone who got, a 10, like probably a lot of people who got a 10 got an A in the course, right? So just keep in mind, like that's the benchmark, okay? I think when you realize this, you feel less pressure. That's why I'm saying it to you, okay? Are we ready to move on, to continue? All right, let's go ahead. I'm going to stop the share and we'll go back. You guys see me in big again? So again, I want to emphasize what we're doing. It just starts to look, it's very repetitive, right? When you get comfortable with it, it's repetitive. And actually, once you get comfortable with it, it's pretty remarkable what you can do. You can do a lot, right? It's kind of like when you get used to riding a bike, it's actually pretty amazing the things you can do riding a bike, right? You get used to it like riding it on a flat, smooth surface, then up a hill, probably down a hill first, up a hill next. Then you're able to like do it in the woods. You're able to like, make a little jump with the bike. And like sooner or later, like if you wanted to model this mathematically, like the amount of physics that you intuitively have a feel for once you're comfortable with it is insane, right? So it's a little bit like this with this. It's like you do more of it, then you start to see like, oh my God, I can do a lot of different things. So long as you have the patience to do it, to practice. So practice final, whatever. I'll call this practice final question. This is a payoff to debt holder. What date are we focusing on here? Like, when is this? Yeah, 2, right? So at t equals 2. And then it's value of entire firm at t equals 2. So far, so good? So now let's think about what happens. I need to read the details of the problem, sorry. Face value of 160. So if you don't reach 160, company's in financial distress. So far, so good? Now let's think about what happens when the company goes in financial distress. Remember, this is the value of the firm if it had no debt. The problem is it has debt. So the company is not worth 160 million, right? We said it's worth 150 million right now if it had no debt, but it's worth less than that because it's like, oh my God, we got this shit on our balance sheet. That's lowering our value. Why is it lowering our value? Because all of a sudden, if we're worth less than 160 in 2 years, what happens to the value of our company in the statement of the problem? 50% of value gets destroyed. So if the company would have been worth $100 million with no debt, how much is it worth in this version of the world? 50 million. This is nuanced, by the way. So this is a nuanced little twist in this problem. Because remember when I modeled debt in the HC case, I modeled it as like the payoff has a slope of 1, right? But now actually the payoff has a slope of 0.5. Why 0.5? Because whenever the company is worth less than 160, it defaults. And the moment it defaults, 50% of value vanishes. So 0.5 is literally 100% minus 50%. We okay with this? Yeah. Too bad. We'll talk about this a bit more later, okay? But if you somehow magically stay up just 1 penny above 160, or actually exactly at 160, oof, we've avoided this shit. And we're still worth what we would be without debt because the debt hasn't come to bite us. And so what happens if we manage to stay above 160? Under the don't convert into equity, right? We would get just a flat 160, correct? But we also have the option to convert into what? Into 40% of the post-conversion equity. So another option that's available to my company, sorry, not to my company, but to the owner of this security, is take 40%. And this is convert into equity. Now, when is this going to cross? Someone want to tell me? What equation do I solve to figure this out?
160 divided by 1.4. No, 0.4, sorry.
Okay, so wait. 160, right? Because that's the face value level, right?
Yeah, divided by 0.4.
By 0.4. Yeah, Adam, 100% correct. Does someone want to calculate that for me? 2.400.
400.
Okay, I'm not surprised. I would have picked a number that's round like that. 40 equals 160 over 0.4. That's right, because dividing by 0.4 is like multiply by 2.5. So 320 plus half of is 80. 400, that's right. Exactly. So now, what is the payoff to the security in the current arrangement? It's ba-boom. How big is the jump here? Does someone want to tell me?
80 million.
80 million, 100%, right? It's 50% of the 160. So $80 million jump. And then flat all the way up to 400 and then up. We are done. We understand our security now. Let's go and replicate it. So let's do this fast. What's the replication?
Would you long half a call?
Half of the underlying, right?
Okay. I wasn't sure if you could long half an underlying.
Well, you can't. So this is part of what makes this a little bit dirty. But by the way, the call options on this don't exist either because it's call options on the entire firm.
Okay.
Right. This is not, when I say call options here, it's not the call options on the company's equity. It's call options on the entire value of the firm. So we are still operating in a bit of a world of like hypotheticals, right? This is dirtier than the jewelry example. Yeah, so long, 0.5 unit of entire firm. What else? What happens at 162 things? So someone voice up for me.
You're going to long a CNBC.
Yeah, how much of it?
I think 80.
80 million, yeah. 80 million units of CNBC on what?
The entire firm.
Entire firm. Sorry that I'm being anal, but I'm always going to say not the firm, but the entire firm. With strike price what?
160.
160 million. And T equals?
2.
2 years, yeah. What else? Next ingredient.
Get a short a call for 0.5 units
Yep, so short.
with the strike price of
5
160.
units of call on
The entire firm.
with K equals?
160.
Yep. T equals?
2.
And then what's our last ingredient?
Long point.
Oh, I think a new student in the class, Darth Vader. Yes.
Sorry about that. Yeah, my AirPods make me sound like a robot now.
You better not pretend to be my father, but no, yeah.
Yeah, I just said long 0.4 units of a call with K equals 400, and it's on the entire firm.
Yep.
Equal.
100%. Look, you guys are basically becoming experts at this. I'm not necessary in this equation anymore. Like maybe the only thing that I can help you guys with at this stage, at least from what I feel here right now, that I can help you guys with this, but you guys are good the rest of the way. That's exactly what I want. Like, to me, it's important that the rest of the way be easy for you. Because that's a commodity skill. This is a uniquely valuable skill. Right, exactly as I think Ed had said, 400 million and T equals 2 years. Folks okay with this? Look, I think the third step you guys don't need me to do right now, because the rest of the step is just the Black-Scholes template stage, right? So I won't do that here. Really, the key part was this, and having you guys basically clearly indicate that you got this down. right? So I have faith that you've got the third step down. If you do not, send me an email and we can figure out a Zoom 15-minute office hour block where I will help you with that third step. Okay? But this is basically an example of a problem. Just notice it's a bit of a different problem. It was not a corporate problem. It was a private equity investor problem or something like that, right? Or it was a investing in markets problem. Let me go back to the statement of the problem. I'm not going to do the rest of the problem completely. We've only got 5 minutes left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight the little twist I put into this problem. And I'm not going to answer to you. I'm going to answer it at a high level. And you guys can see if you can actually do the math behind it. Because if you can, that's actually amazing. Because this part of the problem is meant for like 10% of the class to be able to show real progress in. And I'll basically do that in exactly one part of the exam. Not one part every problem, one part of the exam full stop, where I will have something that is between, let's call it 5 and 7 points, where I'm like, this will reveal my all-stars, my real all-stars. You do not need to be an all-star to get an A in the course. It's just useful for me to know. You might wonder, why is it useful for me to know? That's a good question. That's a fair question. I don't know, partially probably just curiosity. But also it helps, like, look, I get emails from VCs, from PE folks, where they're like, tell me your all-stars. So it's good to be able to tell them my all-stars and not be wrong. Okay? So, it's not about, it's actually less about your grade in this class, and it's just, the ability to navigate back channels for unique job opportunities. All right. So this is the twist in the problem. I like this. Okay. So you guys may or may not. Says, look, the borrower, this poor, pitiful automotive parts company, is like, damn, this debt sucks. And they've approached your company to renegotiate the debt. Because you own all the debt. So they only need to come to you. And they want to replace this debt with equity. And they argue that doing so would add value to the firm. Why is this argument correct? And how much value would such a renegotiation add to the firm? Actually, like, first part, it's a 4-point question. First part is qualitative. You could be uncomfortable with math and not be able to do the math part, but still be able to answer something, right? And then the second part is like, are you good at, do you really understand the math that's happening here? And you understand some of the strategic stuff that's happening. Let me exit the screen share and go back to my, am I back in big now? Why is value being destroyed? We already talked about it, right? Look at this triangle right here. Oops, I'm bad at doing it, but this whole triangle right here, what does this represent?
Foregone.
Go ahead, yeah.
Foregone value due to debt.
Yeah, it's not foregone, it's destroyed value. Let's call it what it is. It is destroyed value. It is the stuff where we say, damn, it's a pity that there's debt. Because everybody loses it. No one receives it. It is lost. It vanishes. So it's not something like the private investment fund gets. It's just everybody loses it. And that's what the company is going. They're going like, God, like, debt, look, we don't want to lose this. We are looking like we might lose it. Let's switch things around. I'll give you more equity. Just give up the debt. Because it can be win-win for both of us. How much total win can we have? The value of this value destruction is the win that is left on the table. Let's find a way to create that win by renegotiating the debt contract And then that win, let's divvy it up between the two of us. The rest of the problem is about that. It's about how can we restructure the debt into regular equity so that this win happens and it gets split, I believe, half-half between the company and the private investment fund. Because hopefully we all understand they should be able to negotiate this out. Because this is a nuts thing to have happen, right? And so notice this is thinking a little bit outside the box. It's like we have this problem. Let's try to fix this problem. And in order to find out how we should split things, it's helpful to be able to use these option pricing techniques. Because that tells us exactly how much extra equity we should give the large private equity investor, or sorry, private investment fund. Because, you know, I as the company am not going to go to them and say, look, just convert into equity today. I mean, that would be crazy because 40%, you know, 50% is bigger than this anyway. And this is bigger than that. So if someone comes to me, if I'm the private investment fund and the company comes to me and says, pretty please convert, I'm going to tell them to go fuck themselves. Okay? Because I can get more than it here. I can get more than it here. At best, I do the same. I'm like, what are you thinking about? Like, you want me to give you something and lose something? No way. Right? And I'm like, wait, you want to take this value creation and have it all to yourself? No way. I'm a monopolist right now. Count yourself lucky if I'm willing to give you 50%. Right? I'll be nice to you today, 50%, but damn well you're giving me more than 40%. Let me find out using these pricing techniques how much you got to give me. It's probably more like 50 to 60%. And actually, it really helps to know these tools because you can actually have a really clear explanation for why you're thinking what you're thinking. And most of the time, you've thought of, like, if you'd use these tools, you've thought about it more carefully than the other side, and they're not ready for this argument, so that you've now put them in a defensive position in the negotiation as well, which is a good position for you to be in, so that you can take expertise in something, not just to be a nerd all alone in Bronfman playing around with an Excel spreadsheet, but to like actually be better at doing deals. All right. So hopefully this motivates a little bit about why someone would care if they're in PE, or why someone would care if they're in investment banking, which is going to be touched upon in the most challenging problem of homework 2. All right. And so, yeah, there we go. That's that. We are now done with our formal treatment of topic 2, right? What we're going to start next lecture is our coverage of, you know what I'm going to do? I've decided, because I like to give you guys a little break between topics, right? That's what we did last time. Next lecture is canceled. You guys have the time to reflect on this. And then next week, Tuesday and Thursday, I will start topic 3, and I will cover the bare bones needed for you guys to be able to be ready for the topic 3 question. If across the surveys of my 3 sections today, I assess that that's the route we're going to go. And then the final, I think afterwards it's the final week, or anyway, I'll figure that out. But after next Thursday, we will be 100% done with what gets tested on the final. Sound sensible?